Prologue. Nothing went as planned. It was to be the end of mankind as a collective of individual beings. The Jia front opened its mouth to the sky, but the band of mass-production Evangelions encircled EVA 02, not Shinji's EVA 01. At the commencement of the Human Instrumentality Project's final ritual, with Asuka and her Evangelion at its center, EVA 01 emerged from a hard-won fight against the enemy forces assaulting Nerve HQ and disrupted this ritual. The Tree of Life, which had materialized in the sky when the lance of Longinus pierced EVA 02, now crumbled, the Human Instrumentality Project terminated by Shinji's hand. This is where ANIMA begins. EVA 01 cupped its hands together, as if scooping up water, and raised them to the clear, blue sky. From Katsuragi Misato's perspective on the ground, the giant's gesture seemed like a supplication. "What are you holding?" she asked, and then prompted, "Shinji-kun." Realizing he'd been asked a question, EVA 01's pilot replied through the external speaker. During the battle at Nerve HQ, the Jia front's dome ceiling had collapsed onto the subsurface, the tranquil, subterranean space devastated by bombs courtesy of the Japan Strategic Self-Defense Force and gusts of wind from the swarm of mass-production Evangelions. The watermelon patch's survival was nothing short of a miracle. The dome's collapse had blanketed the subsurface with a layer of ash-colored dust and debris, crumbled bits of the armored ceiling and the buildings of the city above. Only chance had left this particular patch of land identifiable: a broken garden faucet spraying a tall fountain of water. Shinji gently brushed away the dust and found the watermelon leaves and vines still alive. Before the battle, the child pilot had been taking care of the field in its owner's absence. "Honestly, no." Misato gestured to the concrete dome, currently under construction, that would soon cover the old Nerve HQ and its surroundings. "Once the dome is finished, there'll be no sky. And without reflecting arrays, sunlight won't reach down here. After the new above-ground HQ is built, the Jia front will be closed off." "Yeah, I figured. That's why I'm going to move the field to the surface." What did Ryuji say about that idea? He'd also added, "After all, your choice created this world." But Shinji left that part out. Chapter 1. Sentinels of the Biosphere. 3 Unit 0.0 Evangelions orbited the Earth. From this high up, the full horizon formed a closed blue disk that fit neatly into their field of view. The former Unit 00 EVAs had been redesigned for operation in space, including external superscript 2 engines to free them from outside power sources. Evenly spaced 120 degrees apart along the same orbit, the 3 units formed the points of a triangle that enveloped the Earth. A clone of ANIMA REI rode inside each EVA 0.0. They'd been cultivated in artificial wombs and assigned numbers, Cotter, Sink, and 6. Now they slept, eyes half closed, in their individual entry plugs. They slumbered in tranquility, almost as if time had stopped around them. A fluid called LCL flowed gently through the entry plugs to deliver oxygen to the pilot's lungs. The girls looked like delicate dolls as they slept in their aquariums, their hair undulating in the LCL. The chests of their white plug suits held a resin-based muscular mechanism that slowly tightened and relaxed in rhythm with their breathing to help their lungs cycle the thick liquid. The circulation pumps whirred faintly. The external superscript 2 engines let out a distant hum as they idled. Together with the girls, the EVAs formed a monitoring and interception system. And the clone's quiet slumber signified that the world was currently at peace. Most of the corpses of the 9 SEAL mass-production EVAs that assaulted Nerve HQ went missing after their defeat, vanishing either in transit or at their destination. After the nullification of the Human Instrumentality Project, the missing mass-production EVAs became the greatest threat to global security. 3 mass-production units were recovered from the battlefield Nerve HQ and promptly disassembled. Nerve engineers salvaged their superscript 2 engines and later installed them on the backs of the Series 00 EVA units modified for zero-G and zero-atmosphere operation. These new EVA units, designated Series 0.0, were sent into orbit and tasked with finding and eradicating the remaining mass production EVAs. Perhaps there was some irony in using EVAs that operated on power sources reclaimed from their companions' carcasses for this mission, but regardless, the S-2 engines freed the Series 0.0 units from umbilical power and enabled them to operate without support for extended periods. When instructed, the REI clones could awaken in roughly 10 seconds. In 30 seconds, the EVA 0.0 units could rev up from an idle state to combat readiness. And in 90, they could take aim with their long-barreled gamma-ray laser cannons and fire at any target that was within their field of view and some that weren't, as the lasers could penetrate up to a depth of 500 meters. By maintaining their equidistant orbits, the three EVA 0.0 units monitored the entire surface of the Earth, their eyes and ears vigilant to all forms of communication. They were a global anti-angel search and destroy network constructed with the full efforts of NERV, now restructured as NERV Japan, and its leader, Katsuragi Misato. Up to now, the global community had abided the existence of the Evangelions because, despite their overwhelming power, they were ultimately ground-based weapons operated from a small island nation whose borders restricted their range. Once in low Earth orbit, however, these same weapons represented total air supremacy. But despite protests of sovereign infringement, Commander Katsuragi pushed forward unilaterally with her orbital defense strategy, backed by the true might and implied threat of the EVAs. Misato took great pains to emphasize, formally and in writing, that the mission's only goal was to prevent the revival of the mass production EVAs. But such efforts were futile, the nations of the world couldn't help but see a threat. The human instrumentality project had been thwarted. But what would come next? No one could say. Former NERV commander Akari Gendo and Dr. Akagi Ritsuko had disappeared during the battle, along with the project's key conspirators. Vice Commander Fuyatsuki Kozo had resigned with hardly a word. But even if they'd still been around, they wouldn't have had a better grasp of the future than anyone else. This was uncharted territory. Though the world was easing into a time of peace, vigilance sometimes necessitated force, even absent the Angel's threat. Under Misato's command, the personnel of NERV Japan, and everyone involved with the use and development of Evangelions, were keenly aware that the outside world hated them more with each passing day. Despite this, they clung to the hope that all their worry and preparation would be for nothing. 3 years had passed since the battle at NERV HQ, and it was 3 years that NERV, and the world, had needed. The three EVA 0.0 units floated above the Earth with their heads pointing down and their parasols facing the sun. As they flew, they scanned the outer reaches of the atmosphere with powerful sensors in their heads and receptor arrays in their shoulders. They transmitted the data they collected back to NERV Japan HQ, all while carrying the half-asleep race inside. ANIMA REI's physical body could be duplicated from her DNA, but there could only be one ANIMA REI conscious at a time. This seemed to be the rule. The third and current REI hadn't awakened until the second had perished in the battle with the Angel Armazael. But the soulless, in vitro race exhibited a curious synchronicity in motion and brain activity with the third REI, the one possessing a soul. Further examination had led to a method of mental mirroring that allowed REI to control her clones. The current REI was given a number Chua and became the primary REI, with the three soulless clones number Cotter, number Sync, and number 6 as her secondaries, whom she could control as extensions of her limbs, senses, and thoughts. This ability came as a result of training rather than technology, and at present, no known method existed to sever their connection. Furthermore, communication between the race occurred instantaneously, giving them the distinct advantage of being able to respond rapidly to any emergency. There was a catch: maintaining the consciousness of 4 beings with one soul wore on the primary REI. And so the 3 clones remained in light slumber. By imagining herself transferring her consciousness, REI Chua could awaken the orbiting clones from the ground at will. Not long ago, REI Chua had landed the Series 0.0 EVAs one at a time at the Tanegashima Space Center, where they were refitted with upgraded restraint armor before launching them back into orbit. Even during that process, the sentinels remained half asleep unless Rei Chirwa willed them to wake. The three clones also shared senses and could form memories from the experiences of the others. The arrangement was a system of 1+3 but with only one soul. No more children would be made into EVA pilots. This was not only Nerve Japan's decision but also Rei's personal hope. As of this year, all the 14-year-old children who'd been chosen to pilot EVAs, including Rei, were now 17.